coming from Africa, which is a global south, and there is some of missing for the techniques and for the technologies, and also for the fund to provide these projects in Africa generally, and especially in some south of Africa. So the first thing coming for my mind is to the challenges of the renewable energy, not the project itself. So I wanted to hear from everyone also to make sure that I'm not alone who are thinking in this way. Yeah, I think some inputs in the chat box. Yeah, energy poverty. Yeah. Okay. How transfer from non-renewable to renewable? Great. And renewable vs non-renewable? Great. For me, energy transition means shifting to the most optimal energy maximum. Okay. I think almost of us are already thinking in the same way, which is relevant to renewable energy and somehow. So we can start our discussion today with asking us like or wondering about some points like
Hi, Amira. I'm back actually. Thank you so much.
oh great.
Thank you. So I love how Amira started the conversation in asking us what it is that we consider to be energy justice. Because it's today when we go through a panel, I think different perspectives will emerge based on the context, as well as some similarities, I'm sure. And I hope by the end of the panel, we will not be shy any longer and we'll speak a little bit more in the chat and we'll open our microphone and we'll have a great day together today. All right, so I would like to start with Valerie. I want to ask you a little bit about some exciting youth-led innovations that you have experienced, whether it is with your own experience, with the work that you do, or what you have observed around you in your country or your region, some exciting youth-led innovations that have really helped us accelerate energy transition. Valerie?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Christina. In Kenya, university youth energy clubs have really worked with counties to install solar lightings in informal settlements. It began as a student project, but through advocacy, community engagement, and data sharing, it evolved into a county supportive initiative. I've also seen women come together, create communities where they empower each other and actually teach each other the technical part of the energy industry. So I would say those are the most amazing innovations that I've seen so far.
Thank you. So I just want to follow up with a quick question. Since you did say, your answer was short and really good and to the point. So let me follow up with a question. In terms of these innovations that you've observed, what have you also observed that really helped them to thrive? Because I'm sure there are lots of young people on the call who they have great ideas or already implementing great ideas, but there tends to always be this gap between the resources that are needed to maintain, to either start and or maintain those innovations. So what would you suggest really help those innovations to thrive?
I would say a lot of guidance and mentorship, which is actually lacking in, a lot of youth innovation. So I would say I've witnessed a lot of guidance and mentorship, of course, funding and technology, but I would just want to highlight on mentorship and guidance.
Thanks for that. So I love what you talked about mentorship and guidance. I'm going to go to Salma, who has done some peer education, so she would know a lot as well about mentorship and guidance. I would ask you, Salma, how important is that when you rank it with, I would say, 1 being the highest and 5 being the lowest? How important is mentorship and guidance in energy transition, considering that sometimes these topics can be very advanced, young people don't know the language? What would you suggest need to be things that we prioritize in mentorship and guidance?
Yeah, it's always the news bottom. So thank you so much for raising that question. It's a very interesting one. And as you may know, coming first from a background that is, Middle East and North Africa, where sometimes we do have this somehow perspective that is, why should I be interested in energy? Like, who cares, right? We can never reach that. We raise these questions a lot, and we always express it in this ways. So for me, like, if just a quick, like, something that will surprise some of you is that I am coming from political science background, so I have nothing to deal with that. However, you can see me always advocating for food insecurity, for climate change, for also sustainability and energy transition. So for me, honestly, like, the reason why I really wanted to see it like more, let's say, at least first accepted by people, and that's, I believe, anyway, any first step for us to introduce something new to a certain community should always start with education. And that's how I actually got involved in I Act Peer Learning program that was under Irina. And I honestly really learned a lot. And one of the best part is that energy transition, like, the first knowledge is not that, it doesn't really require that academic background. Like, it's same as if you are advocating for climate change or advocating for sustainability. It's like always about having the basics and then try to take actions with your own understanding. So it shouldn't be the same somehow grasping for all. Like, we can all have different understanding for energy transition. I took it from my own perspective and I tried to implement a project with my community and try to simplify it to them. And that's a key word that I will always insist on, is that we need to simplify first these kind of terms and make sure that youth are somehow familiarized with these concepts and terms that they look sophisticated if you look at them, but like, if you try really to dig deep and see, like, somehow the very exciting part in it, you're gonna just like want to do something with them on site. So I think that how it clicked with me, when it comes to the energy transition sector. And today, like, for example, at the Arab Forum for SDGs, I was really sad because not literally no one addressed this. Like, no one talked about the energy transition or SDG 17. No one, like, I don't know why it's no longer a priority for us. Is it because, again, it's a very high, like, level achievement, or it's like a goal that it's cannot be seen now? But I think it's high time for us as youth to really push for it more, because it's us somehow who can attract the attention of the governments, and that how the start can be.
Okay. So a lot was just said, and I think some of it, what
Yeah.
I'm pulling from that is that intersectionality is important, context matters. There is no one way, or I would say even one right way in which how we're learning and we're teaching about energy transition. I think it comes down to simplifying it and localizing it, right? Because it's about the context of these young people and the peoples that are affected. I also like that the point that you mentioned about it seems as if it's no longer an urgent part of the agenda. So I'm going to go to Josh and ask him a little bit about that, because you are an SDG 7 focal point. You get to advise a number of organizations that work on this directly, international organizations. Let me ask you, is this still an urgent part of the agenda, if you can say? And how do we either get it to urgency once more or maintain the urgency that it may have?
Absolutely. I think energy is and always will be and a real priority and urgent part of these agendas. But the issue we're seeing now is that it's less in the focal point and it's more just seen as a cascading amplifier of these other SDGs itself. So when we look to energy, we don't just consider energy access or energy poverty, which, all of us here in the webinar were aware of just how prevalent these are in the global south. We've still got 685 million people without access to electricity, 1.18 billion people living in energy poverty, 2.1 billion in clean cooking in access. So, we all are aware of these statistics, but when we're looking to energy now, and even at the ECOSOC Youth Forum right now, energy isn't one of the key SDGs right now. We see energy in relation to health, energy in relation to climate, energy in relation to education, skills, training, but we seldom see it as the spotlight anymore. So I think what we've seen is a narrative shift for energy and its prevalence in these discussions, more as an accelerator underpinning all of these sort of SDGs and these focal points at the core of discussions right now. I really liked actually what you're saying, Selma, about the whole issue of simplifying learning as well. It's one of the things that we're not seeing too much now, because it's almost become embedded in our way of thinking, especially with energy and energy practices. I think we've almost become too good at making our messages so translatable and understandable to audiences that it's almost taken a little bit of the limelight away from the issue of energy itself. And even when we're looking at mentorship and guidance, support, funding, all of these issues and initiatives are already there, but they're done in silo. Seldom do we actually join the dots together and say, what's connecting them? How can we put young people in touch with these as well? So it's another sort of underlying issue that we're seeing, but 100% energy is and always will be at the forefront of this agenda, because it's the key enabling point to enable the entire agenda 2030.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to go over to Cecilia, because we're hearing the young people talking about simplifying the learning, simplifying the teacher and the mentorship and guidance support that they need, maintaining the urgency. I think my question to you is, when from your perspective with the young people that they come in and they advise, what would you say is one of the primary barriers right now that is, I would say, preventing this advice that has been given from really being mainstreamed as quickly as we can? So I think it's a question that I've always wanted to ask, because yes, the young people do their research. Yes, they write the extensive policy papers. Yes, they come to the meetings and they present. And from your perspective, you looking on, you being able to meet with the different partners, the different countries, you are able to touch and see the different stakeholders, even the ones that we cannot see. What would you say? Give us a little insider information, if I may, that could really help us to ramp up our advocacy, to say that this is one of the barriers that we're facing that prevents our messaging from being mainstreamed. Is Cecilia still with us? I did recall her saying earlier that she had some challenges. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, just open your microphone. You are muted.
You have to press the microphone icon. You're
Thank
still
you. Yeah, thanks so much. I'll need some help in unmuting the person who's just helped me. So I wanted to come in here and say, Selma has just really placed, the hammer on the nail. We are making our processes so complicated. We are building a mountain. Today, I'm dealing with a COP agenda that's 176 agenda items. How can the young people really be able to participate effectively in all those 176 agenda items? Also important about technology transfer, about adaptation, about financing, about capacity. And these are all elements that are critical to the transitions to energy. At COP28, we made a significant move and progress with announcing the tripling of renewable energy and doubling energy efficiency, and further complicated it by saying it needs to be mainstream and integrated, but we do not, in our structures, allow for that integration or for that interconnectedness. Why would you discuss energy transitions without discussing food, water, and other issues that are related to adaptation? And how can you discuss it also without talking about zero emissions? And I think that's where the crux of the matter is how can we be able to simplify the way we develop, whether it's international global policy and national policy, to allow us to come with those concrete solutions that we can socialize, that the local city municipality can understand, comprehend, and find a way to place an innovation or a solution that has been developed by young people to respond to an energy need, whether it's an efficiency need or is a supply need, or actually responding to demand by offering a framework that allows this progress. I think that for me is one. The institutional setup is kind of flawed and is not allowing for that, for access, for inclusion. You're not being able to participate effectively in decision making, even when we make so many decisions, including at COP28, the creation of a youth leader, youth champion. That doesn't really open up the space for you to be able to take action and make solutions. So I think we really need to start discussing what is it that continues to open up, allow for space for inclusion, but at the same time, people are excluded. And for me, it's the critical barriers. Without access to finance, without access to the decision-making table, without you being on the table and having equal opportunity for your voices to be heard, again, that becomes difficult. So I started my career, and I was so lucky very many years ago, about 26 or 28 years ago, with the urban agenda. And at that time, there were only 2 NGOs that were participating in the UN Habitat or UNEP processes. But I found my way through mentorship by the older generation that were already part of those processes, holding my hand and bringing me to the table. But it required confidence in me to raise my hand and say I wanted to be part of the drafting of the first Habitat agenda. And I was we were only 2 of us from Africa on the table in Istanbul. I was barely 23, 24 years old, holding the pen and being part of the drafting team. But it takes a lot of confidence to do that. So the mentorship that Valerie was talking about is critical, but we have to find the right mentors. But we also have to press to have this space on the decision-making process, but we must get the enablers. We must have access to finance, we must have access to capacity, and we must have access to the technologies and capacity for that transfer. And that's where I think the crux of the barriers are for you to be able to discuss, to do it. The spaces are there. There are decisions at the General Assembly for youth. There are decisions at our COP for youth, but it's not happening at the level it should be happening. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that really covers what I fully agree with that. I think lack of access to capacity, as you said, funding, us being integrated into the processes at all levels, not just consultations, but in the meaningful implementation, evaluation processes. I see Josh shaking his head right throughout. Josh, I want to bring you in. What else would you add, if any, or anything you'd want to expound on and what Cecilia just talked about in terms of where we really need to go to have meaningful youth inclusion in the energy transition and all the related processes?
100%. No, I completely agree actually with everything that Cecilia was saying, especially the cruxes of all these sort of enablers that we're not seeing. The irony is not lost that they are all there, but as I sort of said, they are all far removed, or the way in which we communicate these to young people or make them accessible is just relatively unknown as well. I've been in this youth space now for just about the best part of 10 years, so I'm a little bit old and weathered when it comes to this. But I've sort of seen time and time again, COP and COP again, that although progress is happening, it's not happening enough, and it's not happening fast enough. COP27 was the first time that we had this youth booth, this actual dedicated children and youth pavilion. And yes, the space has continued to grow and expand, but ultimately it's such an overwhelming environment that young people themselves really struggle to find engagement, and not only just engagement, but meaningful engagement. They are very much just an afterthought in this. Often we see them self-funding to get out to COP, to participate, to have their views and opinions reflected, but there's actually no way, unless you're in a very privileged position, to have your thoughts, your views, your perspectives actually reflected and included in these decisions, these processes. There's no way to continue the follow-up process long term as well. Almost once the COP is gone for youth, it's passed and we're on to the next one. So, there are individuals like we've got on this call here that are really advocating for this. I know Energy Working Group are really advocating for a dedicated energy youth track within COPs as well. But again, it's a massive burden of responsibility that's been placed onto us to be these drivers of change, to try and accelerate this. So again, closer collaboration and working together and actually making and opening these spaces up, and so that they're more accessible for youth, sort of has to be at the forefront of what we're pushing for. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Josh. So I heard you mention the global energy track. I want to bring in Valerie to ask if you could prioritize one thing. Think about your local context or even your regional context. If you could prioritize one thing that you think local government or your regional government, I know you have the African Union there and you do have an African Union, I think an envoy who's supposed to be a young person. You do have other related structures, etc. What would you prioritize you would prioritize based on your experience to say that if we had this one thing, along with other things, of course, but at least this one thing, we would see more meaningful inclusion of young people in this process? What would you say?
Thank you so much, Christina. I will insist on mentorship. Allow me to say two things: funding and mentorship. And when I say that, I say fund the youth directly, no complicated requirements, no long processes, take what has been tabled and, take the bold ideas that the youth are actually bringing to the table and bring them to life, guide them step by step and bring them to life and be able to fund them without age-based limitation, just trust, mentorship, and capital. Because I've seen the ripple effect of giving, let's say, a student probably like $100 to run a local clean energy workshop. So imagine that being multiplied with intention. A youth energy innovation fund could be a game changer if it would be multiplied by intention. So we don't need to be actually rescued, we just need to be resourced and guided. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said. Resourced and guided. Going to be your hashtags after today. Was someone saying something? No? Okay, no problem. I guess that person will open their mics later on in the session. So I want to ask you, Selma. Valerie just talked about that we need to be funded, we need to be resourced, we need to be guided. And we've mentioned a little bit of, what is not working, what we need to see. But let me ask you, Selma, what has worked? What has worked? What have you seen that you would say this one thing, this one effort initiative works? And we need to mainstream it. We need to scale it beyond whatever context it currently exists in. Do you have any of those?
Yeah, I think the perfect example that I was part of was civil society, honestly. Civil society does a great job in just, providing you with that basic knowledge without being like judged. And you will end up just like learning in a way where you will just be inspired to just think about why not taking it to the next level and put it on site and try also to share it with my community. Part of like there's like this one question that sometimes you see it a lot in so many forums, like when you try to apply for internships or conferences, and they say, how are you going to turn this knowledge into how are you going to share this knowledge with your community or with your NGO? And I really like this question because it's always like makes me think, how should I really benefit my NGO or my community with this knowledge that I'm gaining? Civil society worked and did a great job. I think SDG 7 Youth Constituency did a great job in that. I used to be like a pretty active member past in the days with Comms team. And then like now, responsibilities and I have so much going on. But like it's among actually the very like I think strong initiatives that are doing great job at the international space as well, always pushing for the youth recommendations and all. Second thing would be academia. We are seeing really universities somehow trying to push for this kind of new majors that are in the energy sector, trying also to come up with new research projects and with new data to make it like at least like more interesting for people to why not think about the sector from a different perspective, not only just academia, but try also to take it to the next level. Again, it can be through projects, it can be through companies, and actually there are great initiatives here in Lebanon who are trying to create new startups in the energy sector. So these actually we cannot just like lose hope and say no, there is nothing happening. Energy sector is completely forgotten. No, we're seeing amazing work done by youth, whether in non-profit sector or even in the profit sector through startups and innovation mainly. So I think adding like a modern touch in terms of technology and stuff will make it more interesting. And the last point would be I think also sometimes I think this is like more of missing. Sometimes I feel like people are still avoiding to talk about energy transition because they say it shouldn't be a priority of today's world. We need to first take care of the other SDGs, which is something that I don't like. I don't really agree with much because I feel like energy transition need to be somehow priority in today's world, especially with with technology being available. With it somehow can push also youth to to come up with more ideas that can fit with energy transition, and this can actually help us to create more initiatives, projects, and stuff like that.
Thank you. I can hear the passion shining through. Thank you for those suggestions. I think I'm going to go back to Cecilia because I know at some point we may lose you. So I want to bring in the aspect of cities and municipalities. I know that UNFCCC, the UN. Well, the UN is UNFCCC, but these different UN agencies, other international organizations, they do have a role to play, and they are playing their roles in terms of engaging young people, funding innovations, providing capacity, all of that. But cities and municipalities also have a role to play. And I feel like as someone from a SIDS nation, small and developing state, at least in the ones that I'm associated with, I don't really see a lot of work being done by local government to engage young people in energy transition. So it's funny because I see more of the international stage, and there's this disconnect between local solutions, local innovations, and then these young people engaged at the international level. So I wanted to ask you, because you would have seen some best practices possibly, or have seen know of or seen local communities, local cities engage young people. Do you have any best practices you'd like to share or recommendations on how it is that they should be engaging with the young people? Cities and municipalities now, local governments.
Thanks, Christina. I'm actually a town planner by profession, and I spent 13 years of my career supporting cities and municipalities in integrating environmental management while I was at UN Habitat. Now, the good news is at our last COP, the cities came together in municipalities and mayors from across the world, and they launched what they're calling the multi-level governance. And I had the opportunity to moderate that session. And so firsthand, I have the information that there is a huge commitment for pushing for that multi-level governance approach, which means that decisions should be scaled down or cascaded to the lowest possible level. And for me, that means the engagement of communities, the engagement of those that are playing any role whatsoever, including the youth. And that should be a recognition across the board for all municipalities. The cities, municipalities are always the closest spaces to young people, and that can provide intergenerational collaboration. And therefore, conversations between you and the city leadership, the city mayors, becomes critical. So as a first step, I'd like to encourage you to have this YUNGOS also at the municipal level and continuous conversation with the local leadership, because that's where the action happens. The many cities are not solely responsible, particularly in many developing countries. The provision of national energy grids and national and energy, let me say as a whole, is normally at the prerequisite, and perhaps Josh can correct me if I'm wrong, it's basically normally a national issue, and therefore there'll be a national utility that will be responsible for that. In my work life, 10 years in South Africa, municipalities were playing a role, and therefore they buy energy in bulk, and then they're able to sell it to the city, which is quite a different model to what we have where I come from in Kenya. But what is very important for us to understand as we start engaging with the municipalities is to unpack the whole issue of energy efficiency and the role that you could play in this space. First of all, it's not only about reducing emissions, but it's about expanding opportunities. And that should be perhaps your entry point in your conversation with municipalities. It's about whether a health clinic can refrigerate medicine that's much needed, and therefore seeing some innovations around that. It's about whether a school can operate after sunset or a child can do their homework at home because they don't have lighting. And what are the innovations around that and what can you offer to that? It's also about how the streets and neighborhoods are properly lit. And we had very interesting innovations also on street lighting, just to ensure that when girls are walking back home, they have no fear because there is light, there's no darkness, and that it is safe. So the whole issue of safety and security becomes also important. So how do you unpack that for a city leader to tell them these are the opportunities and this is what could be offered, and these are the technologies that are being developed, and these are the innovations that are happening, and we want to come to the table to be part of your process of providing solutions to urbanization. We also know we are urbanizing very highly. So what I want to emphasize here is that there is an opportunity, but also for core leadership in programming and in provisioning of solutions. And there are good examples. I will say in South Africa, where I worked, in the cities of Cape Town, I have seen innovations, particularly in the informal settlements of Kailicha, where the University of Stellenbosch is working with local communities to innovate on renewable energy and expanding the renewable energy neighborhood-wide, so that there is, to a great extent, a zero price to provision of energy at the local level. So you may want to look at some of those examples. There are examples also across in Asia, in the solar area, where communities, particularly women and youth, are being trained on the operation and maintenance of solar power. So again, that's operational side. So they are scattered all over the world, and I'm sure Josh, particularly UNDP, can be able to provide more examples than that. But where I come from, I am more on the governance, and I think that there is an opportunity here for you to find a way at the global level to interact with them. There will be even at COP30, I know that, organizing big events around COP30, but also as you move at your national level. The next one, the cities are playing a very leading role now in the formulation of the NDCs. 170 countries have not submitted their NDCs. Some have not even started drafting their NDCs. I think there is an opportunity for you to be a co-author of the NDCs. The NDCs, a big part of it is normally energy sector. So are you able to come up with practical actions or implementation frameworks that can support your NDC? Find out if your NDC is being prepared, who is preparing, come to the table, or find your way onto the table to craft your NDC so that you're part of the policy making. So that's basically what I can say at this point, but I think there are huge opportunities in cities and municipalities and the frameworks that exist out there.
Thank you. A lot of practical suggestions. I've written some down. I think I need to go and implement them right away in my country. And I'm sure the Younger Energy Working Group will also be considering these as well to see how we can build the capacity of the young people in these local settings, as well as you rightfully said, reach out to those in governance and see how we can work together. Because as you said, if we can provide very context specific as well as practical ideas that they can find useful for what the challenges that they're facing, we may find ourselves becoming faster partners with these institutions and with these systems of governance. So thank you again, Cecilia. All right, we're coming down. We're coming down. I think I'm going to have each of the youth speakers answer this final question. And then we go straight into opening it up to everyone here to ask the questions that you may have. All right, so I think what I'd want you to reflect on is there are a number of conferences happening this year that are supposed to be, oh, they're not just high level, but they're supposed to be platforms where a lot of decisions will happen. Like, for example, the World Social Summit. We have financing for development happening, of course, the usual UNGA, etc. And so there are a number of priorities, and I like to say competing, but they're not. They're supposed to be integrated and intersectional priorities. What would you say should be the primary priority? Because there's so many of them. The primary priority we need to focus on for energy transition. The primary priority we need to focus on, and then by noting this priority, you're making your call to action, whether it be to the government, local cities and municipalities, or even to your fellow young people, of what that particular stakeholder needs to do to help achieve that priority. So let me just repeat that. One priority for energy transition for this year that you think we need to focus on when we consider all of these different meetings that we're going to be having, etc., as well as one suggestion, solution that a particular stakeholder needs to undertake now to have this priority achieved. I will start with Selma.
Okay, oh my God, all lights on me. Jolt is the expert. No, I can handle it. So honestly speaking, I'm gonna start first with the suggestion because we need first to approach our decision makers. Then I think I'm gonna move to the next part. Honestly, I think we need to stop having like the energy transition as a hard goal to reach, because that's like the picture that has been always shaped over time, that it's like a goal that we cannot just like make it happen, and as developing countries it's going to be always hard. So like I think we need to first narrow at least this narrative and try to replace it with a more like shining one, where energy would be somehow more used and will be more embraced by its youth. Let's say if the older generations couldn't really somehow deal with it, I think the current generation can do a lot about it, because we are seeing so much interest in technology. And I think energy sector will be somehow a great fit to implement this kind of ideas, innovative ideas that young people are bringing to the table. So please listen and make this as an objective that we need to really somehow work on it for 2025. Okay, we will not move to the 2026. Sorry, for the other question was the other part you said? I can't hear you.
Just in a short sentence, you could just explain who are or note the stakeholder to help us achieve this. So just
honestly, all stakeholders can contribute to this. Again, civil society already like somehow started that first step where they can somehow familiarize youth with what is truly happening on the ground. Then also, of course, governments, as for example, Larry said, governments and private sector, they can always provide the financial support, the space, the venue where you can somehow practice that knowledge. And then governments, I think where they can do, for example, in ministries, we can just have maybe a department or a youth advisory group that they can somehow see or work with civil society on how to improve the sector. This can happen literally in every state. It's just like in a department, in the energy department, and they can just like integrate this advisory group and they can just take it from there. Or maybe even like youth hubs where more knowledge is somehow being shared in these spaces, and this can literally happen at the grassroots level. These are very simple actions that can be taken, and youth already started the first step. Now other stakeholders really need to integrate themselves.
Thank you. We're bringing energy back into energy, right?
Yes, literally. Thank you.
Okay, Josh?
Yeah, no, so for me, I think actually Selma captured it really quite excellent. The scale, the scope of everything. If I'm reflecting one priority for this year, I think it's to move from action to scaling, because we already have all the solutions that we need for the energy transition, the energy revolution. We now need to actually move beyond just saying we're going to do it and actualize it. We need to begin to scale our efforts. We need to look about how we can de-risk funding, financing, make projects more affordable, greater integration for local energy communities themselves as well, sort of bring it back to the value of people, place, themselves at the end of the day. And in terms of how we actually can find a synergy, a solution to do this, I would say I would almost challenge our mindsets that we've got right now, because we all seem to be trying to focus on governments and how we can integrate ourselves within ministries and all of this. But I've been in this space just over 10 years. It's not come to anything right now. It's an issue that we've seen time and time again, predating us here, and it will continue to elude us as we all transition out of this youth agenda. So I would say, why not target parliaments? Why not target local constituents? Why not target mayors? Sort of, why not diversify the approaches that we're doing? These are the guys that are holding governments to account. This is the root source themselves. If you want to have an action, a voice, if you want to have the ability to be able to generate some real change and stir things up, stir the agenda up, go to the root source of it. Don't try and go right to the top, but consider a bottom-up approach and sort of work your way from there. So just changing the dial a little bit is sort of what I'm thinking would be a good shift for this year.
Thank you. Diversification of our efforts. If we go around, you never know who might be that one partner that will actually help to increase momentum. Thank you for that, Josh. And Valerie, you have the last word.
Yeah,
one party.
thank you.
Go.
Thank you, Christina. Like you just said, we've seen a record number of conferences and summits this year. And these forums are meant to bring stakeholders together, elevate voices, and accelerate action in the energy transition. But the truth is, conversations without commitment are not enough. We cannot keep gathering to repeat statistics we already know or to celebrate potentials without funding it. These spaces must move from being symbolic to being catalytic. If I could propose one primary priority across these platforms, it would be to center implementation and youth integration. The energy transition won't be powered by promises, it will be powered by policies, funding, and platforms that bring youth together. Youth-led solutions to life, actually. So here's my final call to action is, let every conference, every panel, every declaration be tied to a measurable outcome. Let's start linking ideas to resources. Let's track commitments made to youth at these forums, follow up on them. And importantly, let's move from listening to youth to building with them, because we are not the energy transitions audience, we are the engine, basically. Thank you.
Indeed, we're not the audience, we are the engines, powering energy by youth. All right. So what a way to segue into our question and answer. At this time, anyone who is comfortable to open up their microphones to ask a question, or you may actually have an intervention. You may have your own suggestion, your own context that you want to share. You may have your own innovation. You may be an entrepreneur and you want to share what you're doing to help accelerate energy transition. At this time, you're free to open your microphone and speak for a minute. And if you're not comfortable opening your microphone or you're not able to, for whatever reason, you're also welcome to state your suggestion, intervention, etc., or to ask a question in the chat. So please, it's now open to you.
Feel free, guys, to share your inputs, your thoughts, maybe your feedback about the session. Any thoughts come in your mind during the discussion? Any recommendation from your side to more involving for youth in the energy transition process?
I might intervene to that point that you had there about getting youth more involved in the energy transition process. I think there there are ways and there are multiple avenues that we're seeing. There's multiple organizations. There's Young Go Energy Working Group, there's Student Energy, there's the European Youth Energy Network, SDG 7 Youth Constituency. There are all these organizations that are available where we have hundreds of thousands of young people who are actively advocating and trying to drive real system change. But again, the awareness of all these initiatives just isn't there right now. So I suppose there would be value working with local communities, working with parliaments, as stated, to actually raising awareness that these are taking place. You know, we already know that energy is a key enabler or multiplier across the entire SDG agenda, and that it is a core crux of the success, whether we will succeed or whether we will fail on this. So definitely one of the key points that I'm thinking is how can we work more closely with these local stakeholders themselves to get young people involved, way predating sort of the stages we were all at, looking at children and youth sort of within schools themselves, raising the awareness of that, making this education, this understanding more accessible and tangible from early days.
Maybe I can add to Josh. Maybe you guys can also explore other opportunities. Now we are more of sharing opportunities like IAC's peer learning program by Irina. Irina, by the way, it's like a perfect, I think it's that one perfect space that makes a lot of opportunities for youth to at least build that first, I would say, like, to get the basics of this sector of energy transition and how to be involved in its advocacy as well. You can explore their programs. There is growth program, IAC peer learning program as well. Another thing would be also, I know probably some of you here will be hosting Alcoy, the local coffers of youth, this year, and I'm actually one of them. You can also try to, why not, give it a shot and have like a subtopic on energy transition. This can be like a very good start for us as civil society to push for this. I would say, sector to be more embraced by our governments, and also to be that one first entity to familiarize people with what is even SDG 7, why it's even 7, why it's existing, why it's like among the top 7, you know? So like we can just start it by answering this kind of basic questions. And I think these spaces that we can make under the younger youth constituency would be perfect for us to raise them. So this can be a suggestion just for you all in case you still didn't make up your subtopics list yet, even though I did.
Thanks for your inputs. Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm happy to take this one to start the conversation. I think the one thing that I've seen, and I was reflecting on it actually earlier this year at the IRENA Youth Forum and then the IRENA Assembly as well, is we had this fantastic panel where we had representatives from the UN as well, and the Youth Council members of IRENA that were there. What we saw in reflections was that the barriers that young people are facing have always been the same. The problems have always been the same. The dialogue itself has not shifted. What the issue we're seeing is that people age out of the youth agenda, and there's actually no one there attempting to champion it once they're out of that space, because life happens, we progress, we age out, we continue onwards and upwards with our careers. And I'm not saying that people deliberately forget or that it's done in any form of malice, but again, it is incredibly difficult for young people to be the drivers of change themselves, to have this lasting legacy, because these spaces are not designed for us to be there, to have our voices, our opinions, our ideas, our initiatives sort of spotlighted. So for me, that's at least one of the key things I'm seeing is this isn't a new conversation. This has always been in existence. And unless we are that generation that can seriously hold ourselves to account and say, it stops with us, ultimately we are the ones that have already bared the brunt of climate change, and we will be the generation that has to endure it all. We have to be more proactive and do better than our predecessors and say this dialogue of inaction has to cease at some point. Let us be those champions and change agents to make it so. So that's at least the points that I'm seeing.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, they said all good things must come to an end. I don't believe in that. I actually believe that good things come to a pause. I just want to express my gratitude to my panelists today, Valerie, Selma, Josh, and of course, Cecilia, for taking time out of your schedules to be here with us across different time zones and different obligations. We're very happy to have had you here. I'm actually live from ECOSOC. So if there's anyone on the call who's actually at ECOSOC, we must take a photo and we'll attach it to the group photo that we're about to take in the next few minutes to say that we are an hybrid event. So thanks again, everyone. Please, for everyone, I know some of you were very shy today, but I hope you took away, you had some good takeaways from the session. You will apply them in your various constituencies. Please reach out to Younger Energy Working Group. We're always willing to collaborate. We're always looking for talent, looking for persons to contribute to the policies that we write. We have a handbook going on right now, our governance handbook. This is supposed to be the one-stop shop for everything energy for young people globally. So if you want to contribute to that, please let us know. Just anything else. We'd love to work with you and support you in what you're doing in your communities. Once again, everyone, thank you for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Younger Energy Working Group event. Thank you. Please do a smile. We're going to take a photo. I'm asking Saika to do the photo for us, if you don't mind. And we'll do a big smile and then we'll go. Energy indeed. Energy being powered by the energy of young people. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.
So much. Take care. Nice to see
Bye.
you all. Bye bye. Merci. Thank you.
Honored to see you all.
Bye.